Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are heading into a silent room with too many stories and not enough listeners. You're standing in a public library long after the students have left. The fluorescent lights hum gently above, and the rain outside taps soft rhythms on the windows. You're not here for a book tonight. You're here for something older, something that was misfiled, forgotten, something that once mattered to someone and still should. You probably won't survive in this world if you think the truth always wins on its own. So before you get comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And if you're still awake in your corner of the world, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You are Marion. Or rather, you become her the moment your shoes squeak across the polished tile floor of the reference wing. You've worked here long enough to know when a shelf breathes wrong, when a drawer is slightly off, when a book has been moved by someone with unquiet hands. Rain has a way of making libraries feel haunted, not in the ghost story sense, but in the way silence thickens like it wants to tell you something. Tonight is one of those nights. It's Thursday, which means nobody comes in after 7. You already locked the front doors, shut down the microfilm machines, and texted the janitor you'd turn off the lights yourself. He thanked you, said his son has a school play tonight. So now, it's just you, a flickering green exit sign, and the lingering smell of printer ink and worn spines. There's comfort in this place, in the rows of Order the Card catalog that never argues the keys you wear around your neck, that always open something when asked. But comfort doesn't mean easy. You descend the narrow staircase into the basement, the archive level. Fewer people go down here. The ceiling is lower, the lighting dimmer. But for you, it's sacred. You've catalogued this entire floor by hand over the years. You know what's down here, or so you thought. It's in the corner behind the local civil case binders near the wall, where the plaster always feels a bit colder. A box, medium-sized. No barcode, no index number. Just a name you don't recognize, scribbled on the side in blue ink. Half-faded evidence, do not destroy. J. Ellis, case closed 2010. You tilt your head. That's not the format the county uses. You'd know you created the reference guide they still follow. You lift the lid. It doesn't creak, doesn't offer drama. It just opens. Inside, one trial, transcript, a handful of photocopied forms, and a yellowing index card with a single line, typed across the top. No appeal filed. Do not reopen. Something about that card, its finality, makes your stomach twist. You know rules. You know how files flow. You know how things vanish and how often no one notices. You take the transcript. Just that. Close the box, slide it back where it was. You'll return it. But first, you need to know why it's there. You climb back upstairs. The rain hasn't stopped. A distant rumble of thunder rolls like slow applause. You sit at the reference desk, flip on the task light, and begin to read. The case was standard on the surface. Alleged armed robbery of a corner store. No physical evidence. Just one witness. Defendant claimed he was at a community center all night. No record entered to prove it. Public defender overworked. Judge brisk. You pause. You've read hundreds of cases over the years. You help law students prep for moot court. You assist researchers tracking long-settled land disputes. You know what a clean trial looks like. this one isn't messy. It's silent. Too silent. The defense cross-examination only 3 lines. The prosecutor's summary over 6 pages. And nowhere, not once, is the name of the community center mentioned again after opening statements. You feel your chest tighten slightly, because this isn't noise. It's absence, and that's harder to see. You glance at the clock, almost midnight now. You should close up, but the transcript rests heavy in your lap. You look down at the defendant's name again. Jerome Ellis. No middle initial. No priors listed. No statement from him in the transcript. Just silence. You tuck the papers back into your bag, walk to the front doors, and lock up behind you. The streetlights cast long reflections on the wet pavement outside. As you walk to your car, something keeps replaying in your mind. Not what was said in the courtroom, but what never was. You don't sleep well that night. The next morning, the transcript still rests beside your bag like a stray object you forgot to return to the world. It hums with quiet weight. You can feel it even while making your tea, even while brushing your teeth. It has rewired your awareness. Suddenly, every silence feels like a signal, every gap like a door. Someone closed too fast. When you arrive at the library, you head straight to the archive basement again. This time, you bring gloves, a small notepad, and your resolve. The box is still there, right where you left it, behind the row of civil cases no one's touched in years. You pull it out gently, bring it up to the front desk, and place it on the clean surface with a kind of reverence, like it's not just paper and staples, but something heavier, something waiting. You lift the lid again. Beneath the transcript you already took, there are 3 more items. A torn map of the neighborhood. A single black and white photograph of a street corner you almost recognize. And a CDR with no label. You set them aside carefully, eyes drawn to the 3rd item, another folder thin, but bearing the county seal. You open it. Inside a single memo, a chain of custody log with an evidence number receipt of transfer, and a handwritten signature that's been circled in red pen. The signature is illegible, but the date is clear. April 4th, 2010. That was almost 15 years ago. You pause. The photo shows a rundown corner store with 1 broken window and a hand-painted sign reading Lorenzo's. You know that place, or rather, you knew it. It's a bike repair shop now. Your hands tremble slightly as you hold the photo. There's a timestamp, blurred but readable, 7:18 p.m. In the corner of the image walking past the store is a man in a hoodie. You can't see his face. But the date and time, April 4th, 2010, 7:18 p.m., match the prosecution's timeline of the alleged robbery almost exactly. Why would this photo exist? Why wasn't it used? You glance at the CDR. No markings. Could be anything. You check the time. Still 45 minutes before the library opens. Just enough. You boot up the reference desk computer, the old one with the external disk reader. It whirs slowly as you slide the CD in. Your heart pounds with quiet, inexplicable dread. A single file loads StoreCam 2010 or zo404.movie. You double-click. The footage is grainy, time-stamped, jittery, but functional. A wide-angle view of the store entrance. For 6 minutes, nothing happens. Then at 7:17 p.m., the door opens. A man enters, not Jerome. Taller, bulkier, wearing a varsity jacket with a bright white sleeve. You feel your breath stop. Because that jacket was referenced in the trial transcript as what the witness claimed Jerome was wearing when he entered the store with a weapon. But the man in this footage, he's not Jerome. His build, his gait, his profile, they're different. His face is never shown clearly, but it's enough to raise questions. At 7:19 p.m., the man leaves. 30 seconds later, the footage freezes, then cuts out. You sit back. If this tape existed, and Jerome was convicted anyway, someone failed him. Or worse, ignored what they knew. You print a still image from the video and label it with the timestamp. Then you pause, wondering, why was this box never entered into the proper archive system? You go downstairs, bring the entire thing back up, and start combing through the oldest catalog logs, the ones not yet digitized. You find nothing. No trace of a box with that evidence number. That means this box wasn't just forgotten, it was hidden. Your eyes linger on the memo with the red circle around the signature. You scan it again and again, hoping for clarity. Eventually, you find a county employee roster from 2010 and start cross-referencing the scribble. It takes almost half an hour, but you match the handwriting style to a former records supervisor, W. Hanley. Retired. Left in 2011 after a short, unexplained absence. You write the name down. It's time to go deeper. You file a public records request for the full trial documentation of Jerome Ellis's case. You don't know yet if you'll be granted access, but you use your name, your role, your years of service. That helps sometimes. You also begin drafting a letter. Not an accusation, just a description, a question, a possibility. You're not sure who to send it to yet. But you know this, the silence in Jerome's trial is beginning to speak. And now you've started listening. You never considered yourself an investigator, not in the traditional sense anyway. You love records, indexes things in their right places. But now you find yourself navigating a kind of puzzle, with pieces scattered across time and silence. You begin rereading the trial transcript slowly this time. Every line becomes a breadcrumb. The prosecutors phrasing the rushed pacing, the repeated emphasis on a confirmed identification. It doesn't sit right. The witness 1A. Vargas claimed to have seen Jerome Ellis enter the store with a hood pulled low and a white-sleeved jacket. But now you've seen the footage. You know there was a man like that. Just not the man on trial. You scan the transcript for the alibi. Jerome claimed he was at the community center 2 blocks away working in the kitchen during a fundraiser. You make a note. Check community center records from April 2010. And you do. You visit the location, which has since been converted into a co-op art space. The woman behind the desk listens carefully as you explain your reason for asking. She's new, but kind. She disappears into the back and returns with a dusty plastic crate labeled Events 2009-2011. Inside you find paper flyers, rosters, volunteer sign-in sheets, one of them dated April 4th, 2010. There it is. J. Ellis, 4:30 p.m. to 8:00 p.m. kitchen. Your chest tightens. He signed in ink. In the middle of a roster with 5 other names all stacked neatly on top of one another. There's no question it's not fabricated. You ask if you can take a photo. The woman nods, watching you with growing interest. Was this someone who got in trouble? She asks softly. You don't answer directly. Just nod. Hope it helps, she says with a seriousness that weighs more than the paper. Back at the library, you sit in the break room with your tea untouched and your phone turned face down. There are too many questions now. Too many things that should have been noticed. Why didn't the public defender press on this? Why didn't they call any other kitchen staff to testify? Why was the evidence box not in the archive catalog. You start to think about Jerome Ellis as a real person, not just a name in bold font. You Google him. His prison photo comes up, outdated, tired eyes, a face trained in stillness. You find no social media, no recent news articles. Just one line in a forgotten database. Inmate, RER 783421, Folsom Correctional Facility. Earliest release eligibility 2029. That's 4 more years if nothing changes. You print the alibi sign-in sheet. You staple it to the still frame from the security footage. You add both to your growing file. Then you see it. At the bottom of the volunteer roster, a name you didn't notice before. W. Hanley Maintenance. The same W. Hanley whose name was on the chain of custody memo. You stare at the paper. A maintenance worker at the community center and the former records supervisor. You check an old employee directory from 2010. It confirms it. William Hanley worked at both the courthouse and the community center part-time at one, full-time at the other. That can't be a coincidence. You search for his current address. It takes some digging, but you find a listing, an assisted living facility about 40 miles out. You hesitate, but you go. On Saturday morning, you drive there. The place is quiet, beige hallways filled with the distant sounds of classical radio and cartwheels. A nurse brings you to him, William Hanley, thinner now, tired eyes, but alert. You introduce yourself, mention the library, the box. He stiffens. You choose your words gently. You ask if he remembers a case involving Jerome Ellis, a misfiled evidence box, a surveillance tape. He closes his eyes. When he opens them again, something in him shifts. I filed it, he says, but they told me not to catalog it. Said it was already handled, but I knew. His voice trails off. You don't press. You don't need to. He nods slowly. I kept a copy. Thought maybe, someday. He asks you to come back next week. Says he'll find it. If it's still there, you thank him. Leave quietly. Back in your car, the rain starts again. You sit in silence. The pieces are gathering, and now they're beginning to fit. You return to the library with a strange steadiness, the kind that comes not from certainty, but from responsibility. You've stepped into something, and now you must keep walking. The morning light filters through the tall windows as you sit behind your desk. Before opening, you pull out the transcript again. You reread the sentencing section. There's barely any acknowledgement from Jerome, just the judge, the gavel, and a note from the public defender. No further comments, Your Honor. That line lingers in your mind. No further comments. But now you have a few. You start organizing everything you've gathered into a proper binder, the CDR footage, the photo still, the volunteer sign-in sheet, and the log memo with Hanley's circled signature. Each piece in a clear sleeve labeled and arranged by date. You don't know who will need to see this next, but it has to be clear, complete, and undeniable. Your hands move with calm resolve, but your mind is restless. You've uncovered enough to raise real doubt. But who listens to a librarian who takes action on a whisper that's 15 years old? You think about that for a while. Then you remember a conversation you had with a researcher last year, a young woman from the Innocence Project, who was combing through local files for a separate case. She'd asked about irregular file logs. You'd helped her find a mislabeled folder from 1994. She sent you a thank you card afterward. You still have it pinned to your bulletin board. You dig it out. There's a name at the bottom. Leah Duvall. You find her email with a quick search. she's still with the project. You draft your message carefully. You tell her about the misfiled box, the security footage, the community center roster. You mention the man still serving time. You attach a summary, anonymized but detailed, and ask gently if it sounds familiar to her team. You don't ask for much. Just a read. Just a glance. You press send. The rest of the day passes in the slow rhythm of books returned and scanned. Patrons shuffle through the aisles with soft footsteps and quiet thank yous. But under it all, you feel the humming of something waking up. Not chaos, just truth, stretching its limbs. Late that afternoon, your phone buzzes. It's Leah. Her reply is short but electric. Yes, I remember this name. Can we talk tomorrow? You inhale, exhale, the kind of breath that changes things. That evening, you can't help yourself. You go online and search again for any mention of the original trial. There's very little. One brief newspaper article, archived with no photo. Man convicted in corner store robbery. Sentenced to 18 years. That's it. No appeal mentioned. No family quoted. Just a name and a sentence. But as you're about to close your browser, you notice a link buried in an old forum post about public defense failures in California. Someone had written, "My cousin Jerome got railroaded. No one cared then. We tried. They told us to move on." The post is dated 2013. You stare at the screen. Somebody tried. And now, a decade later, so are you. The next morning, your phone rings at 9:02 a.m. It's Leah. She listens carefully, doesn't interrupt. Then, in her calm, precise tone, she asks for copies of everything. You promise to scan the binder and email it by the hour's end. She thanks you. Before she hangs up, she says, "We've had our eyes on that case, but we never had the missing piece." You sit in silence for a moment, holding the phone, not moving. You didn't think you were the piece, but maybe you were. You upload the files. You hit send. And for the first time since you found that unmarked box in the archives, you let yourself hope. The email is sent. The binder is scanned. You sit at the desk with your tea cooling beside you, staring out the window as the branches sway in a lazy breeze. The world outside carries on unaware that somewhere in the margins of a case long closed, something is quietly reopening. You don't hear anything for 2 days. And that's fine, because you've learned this work happens in pauses, in spaces between. But on the third day, you find a new email from Leah. Subject, update on Jerome Ellis. She says her team pulled the original court records. Many of them, she notes, were incomplete or missing attachments. The evidence log didn't mention any surveillance footage. The alibi roster from the community center, not included. The transcript you found cleaner and more complete than the one they had on file. She thanks you again. Then a sentence that stills your hand mid-scroll. We're opening a formal review. You reread it. It's real. It's happening, but you're not done yet. The next morning, you return to the library's basement and check on the box one more time. You've grown oddly protective of it, this half-forgotten container of truth. When you lift the lid, something stops you. The CDR is gone. You freeze. Your eyes scan the interior. The rest of the documents are still there untouched. The photo, the memo, the map. But the disk, the original source, the one with the store footage, is gone. You turn sharply. Did you misplace it? You search your work bag, your home folder, the scanner station. Nowhere. But you remember the night you viewed it. You saved a backup to your personal flash drive. The copy is safe. Still, Something's wrong. You head upstairs and quietly log into the internal archive tracking system, just to see if anyone's accessed the basement wing in the last 48 hours. One entry stands out. Entry code LGS38. After hours access. No username. Just a swipe timestamp. 2:14 a.m. You look up the badge code in your staff directory. It belongs to an intern, one who hasn't shown up in over a week. You feel something shift, like the air itself has changed. Someone knew the disk was important, and they tried to erase it. You call the head of facilities and quietly request security footage from the archive hallway between midnight and 3 a.m. 2 nights ago. He agrees, no questions asked. You've helped his daughter get a job application printed before her deadline once. People remember things like that. While you wait, you go to the front desk. There's a man waiting, middle-aged, slightly disheveled, nervous eyes. He says he's looking for a book on parole reform. You ask for his name. He stammers. Says it's not important. Says he'll look around himself. He doesn't check out anything. Leaves 10 minutes later. You make a note. At 4 p.m. the security footage arrives. You fast forward. 2:13 a.m. a figure enters frame. Hoodie pulled up, head down, badge swipe. They walk to the archive door, hold it open, slip inside. 2 minutes later, they leave holding something flat in their hand. You zoom in. It's a jewel case, CD-sized. You exhale. It's not paranoia anymore. It's happening. Someone doesn't want this case to breathe again, but it's too late for that. That evening, you get a call. Not an email, a call. It's Leah. Her voice has changed. Sharper now. The DA's office was notified, she says. They're quietly opening an internal file audit. I'm told to expect resistance. You understand. You tell her about the missing disk, the footage, the security swipe. She's quiet for a long moment. Then back it all up. Print everything. Twice. You already have. That night, you place everything, paper copies, flash drive notes in a fireproof safe you keep beneath your staircase. Not because you expect fire, but because things disappear too easily when they're left unguarded. And this truth, it's not disappearing. Not again. You sit at your kitchen table, every chair empty, except the one you've always sat in. Around you, the night is still. There's no fan running, no music playing, just the faint buzz of the refrigerator and the ticking of the small clock above the window. On the table lies the envelope. Inside is the letter, typed, measured, honest. You didn't know exactly who to address it to at first, so you wrote 3 versions, one to the Public Defender's Office, one to the Office of Judicial Review, and one to the California Innocence Coalition's founder. All with the same contents. A quiet recounting of what you found. A listing of the discrepancies. A question left hanging, not pointed, but undeniable. What happens when no one noticed the first time? You seal each envelope, apply the stamps with trembling fingers, and place them near your door for mailing in the morning. You don't expect an immediate answer, but sending them feels like making a promise. The next day at the library is slow. A few patrons come in, mostly retirees and students preparing for finals. You help a young man find a reference book on local zoning laws and guide an older woman through renewing her digital library card. Life moves on. You've grown used to the duality of it all, outward, calm, inward weight. At noon, your desk phone rings. It's Leah. They're escalating, she says. The DA's team has confirmed they're missing the original security footage and the chain of custody memo. They're now requesting anything you have. You hesitate. I can send them copies, you say. She pauses. Only if you trust them. You don't respond. Not yet. Instead, you call the DA's office yourself. You ask to speak to a legal assistant or clerk handling post-conviction reviews. A woman named Jillian answers after a short hold. Her tone is polite, guarded, but not cold. You tell her you're the librarian who uncovered archival discrepancies in the Jerome Ellis case. Her silence stretches long. Then, we've been informed. Do you have something you believe we've missed? You don't argue. You don't accuse. You describe. The footage, the photo, the community center roster, the chain of custody memo with the circled signature. Jillian's voice drops to something closer to respect. Could you send that directly to me, she asks, giving a private inbox. You tell her you will. You hang up. And feel the cost of it. Trust once spent doesn't come back easy. But someone has to make the first move. Later that afternoon, a man walks into the library. You recognize him immediately: tall, salt and pepper hair, long beige coat. He doesn't look like a patron. He introduces himself. John Whitlow, Assistant District Attorney. You nod. He says he wanted to speak in person, that he read the email, saw the files, that he agrees the case deserves another look. You walk him to a side room and close the door. You sit across from him. You understand, he says gently. We're going to meet resistance. People don't like digging through their own mess. You don't smile. But someone has to. He leans back, looks at the folder in his lap. I've worked this office for 20 years, he says. Some nights I still hear sentences that shouldn't have been spoken. You say nothing. He finally looks up. We'll petition to reopen. You nod. It's not a guarantee, but it's a beginning. And for someone who's lost a decade behind walls, it's long overdue. After he leaves, you walk back into the quiet of the stacks. You find yourself standing by the justice section. There's a copy of Gideon's Trumpet, a book you've recommended countless times. You pull it down, hold it. It's about a man who taught the country that even the voiceless have the right to be heard. You place it back. You think of Jerome Ellis, his face frozen in that photo eyes, never looking at the camera. And you wonder what he'll say when the world finally listens. The envelope arrives a few days later. A simple white rectangle with no return address postmarked from a town up north. Inside is a single page, typed, from William Hanley, you'd nearly forgotten. The last time you saw him, he promised to try and find something, said he might still have a copy. Now, with careful hands, you unfold the letter. It begins plainly. I've thought about that case every year since I left the archive. I was told it was resolved, but it never felt right. The words land heavy like small pebbles dropped into deep water. Then, attached is a copy of a letter I was asked not to file. I kept it in my coat pocket for a month before taking it home. Then it stayed at the back of my closet. There's a second page tucked behind the first. Your hands tremble as you lift it. The header is unmistakable: Office of the District Attorney, Internal Memo. Date, April 6th, 2010. Subject, Ellis Trial. Discrepant surveillance footage. Not to submit. The body of the memo is brief. It notes the existence of alternate footage from a second camera angle provided late by the store owner. It states in careful language that this footage was potentially confusing to the jury's understanding of events, and that a strategic decision was made not to enter it into evidence. The last line is clear, though hedged, Advise suppression for continuity of case narrative. Evidence not logged. You sit in silence. This isn't just a mission. It's intentional. Not a clerical error, not a mistake. A decision. You call Leah. She answers quickly. You read her the memo. Her voice is quiet for a moment. That's enough, she says. That's official policy suppression. It proves intent to conceal. We can move forward. The next morning, you're called to meet with the DA's review team. They've formed a small task group. Just 3 people. You sit with them in a small side conference room at the courthouse. The same courthouse where Jerome Ellis was sentenced 15 years ago. They ask you to walk them through everything chronologically. You do, with dates, times, paper trails, footnotes. You feel the room shift as you speak. You watch one of the clerks take increasingly detailed notes. The assistant DA listens with folded hands, never interrupting, except to ask one question. Why did you keep going? You pause. I guess because no one else did. He nods once, doesn't smile, but his eyes say enough. Afterward, you step outside. The afternoon air is cool, breezy. The courthouse lawn is mostly empty, just a few birds hopping along the path. You check your phone. There's a voicemail. It's from Leah. Jerome knows, she says. He's in the early stages of being transferred back for a preliminary hearing. It's not a full exoneration yet. But it's coming. You listen to the message again. Jerome knows. You try to imagine that moment. A man sitting in a cell, the walls closing in for over a decade, and then a door creaks open, and someone says they're looking again. You wonder what he thought, if he believed it, if he sat in silence, or if he laughed or cried or just closed his eyes. You walk slowly back to your car. A leaf drifts down onto your windshield as you reach the door, and for the first time in weeks you don't feel the weight alone. The box is gone. Not missing, not misplaced. Officially removed from the archive and logged into evidence storage by court order. You watch it go, escorted in a sealed container by 2 clerks and a records technician marked with bright red tape, tagged with an incident number. It's the right thing, necessary, but still watching it vanish into the back of the government van feels like watching a piece of yourself leave. You stand on the library steps afterward, hands in your pockets, as the wind picks up just enough to rattle the leaves still hanging on. Your role has shifted now. You're not the keeper anymore. You're the witness. That afternoon, you receive an email from Leah. Short, clear. Jerome Ellis' status changed. Hearing scheduled October 3rd, 9:30 a.m., location County Courthouse, courtroom 4C. You read the email twice, then again. The words feel foreign and real all at once. For a moment, all the sounds around you fall away, just the silence of your own heartbeat ticking forward. October 3rd. 1 week away. You mark the date in your planner not digitally, but with your favorite black pen. The act feels ceremonial, like you're keeping an appointment with something greater than routine. That night, sleep is elusive. You lie in bed and think about him, Jerome, about what he must be feeling. The hope, the fear, the refusal to let belief bloom too early in case it withers again. You wonder if he remembers the trial, if he remembers what he wore, what he said, how it felt to watch the system turn away like it was too tired to care. You remember the trial now intimately. Every omission, every gap, every redacted detail and absent name. At the hearing, it won't just be the facts on trial, it'll be the silence. The long, heavy silence that lasted over a decade. You walk through the library with a new stillness now. Your co-workers notice it, but don't ask. One of them, Maya, the high school intern, leaves a sticky note on your desk. Hope whatever you're working on gets the ending it deserves. You smile at that. Because endings are rarely tidy. But sometimes they can be honest. On the morning of the hearing, you wear gray. It feels right, calm, steady. You sit in the back row of courtroom 4C, second seat from the left. You don't bring anything with you. No papers, no files. Just presence. The room is modest, well lit, and nearly empty. Jerome enters quietly, flanked by 2 guards. He's dressed in a plain button-down shirt, slightly oversized, tucked into faded slacks. His hands are not cuffed. You feel your breath hitch. He looks older than his photo, thinner, but his posture is upright, alert. He scans the room. His eyes pause when they meet yours. You nod, and he nods back. The judge enters. Not the one from the original trial. This one is younger, softer voiced. She lays out the purpose of the hearing to consider new evidence not available at the time of trial and determine whether there is merit to vacate the conviction. The assistant DA speaks first. He presents the memo, the video, the community center roster, each item introduced in calm succession. No theatrics, just truth. Jerome's new attorney, a woman named Carol Lynn, speaks next. Her voice is measured firm, but never bitter. She doesn't argue innocence. She argues for a second look, a proper look. You watch Jerome as she speaks. His eyes remain fixed forward, but his hands tighten slightly on his lap. A quiet tether to reality. The judge listens. She asks questions, clarifies. Then she says something you didn't expect. The court will recess for 48 hours. I need time. And just like that, it's over. For now. Jerome is let out. This time he glances back. You don't wave. You just sit, quiet, present. Outside, the air smells of autumn. The leaves have started to fall. The next 48 hours stretch like fog over still water. Everything feels suspended, held, waiting for something to either break or breathe again. You go to work, like always. Unlock the doors, greet the regulars, scan books back into the system. But your thoughts are somewhere else, entirely. Looping quiet, always returning to the same question. What happens if it's not enough? You know the evidence is strong. You know what you found. But the courtroom is its own world. What seems clear outside can feel uncertain in that space when words become arguments, and silence can still be mistaken for guilt. Late on the second evening, you sit in your reading nook at home, the same chair you've always curled into, and go through your notes one more time. Not because you need to, but because you can't help it. Then your phone buzzes. A text. It's from Leah. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. sharp. Be there. It matters. You don't ask what that means. You know. The hearing resumes in the same courtroom. You're there early, seated in the exact same place. You clutch a folded sheet of paper in your coat pocket. Not for reading, just for anchoring. Jerome enters again. Still calm, still silent. The courtroom has more people now, press law students, a few unfamiliar attorneys. Then a surprise. A man walks in and heads to the witness stand. He's older, hair receding, suit, slightly rumpled. He introduces himself as Antonio Vargas, the original witness, the one whose testimony convicted Jerome. You sit forward, breath shallow. He begins to speak. His voice shakes not dramatically, just the weight of honesty rubbing against years of denial. I testified in 2010 that I saw Jerome Ellis rob the store, he says. That he was wearing a jacket with white sleeves. That I was sure. He pauses. I wasn't. The courtroom is completely still. I was pressured, he says. Not threatened, just guided. The prosecutor told me they had other evidence, that if I helped confirm the story, it would wrap the case up neatly. I didn't want to be difficult. I thought I was doing the right thing. He looks toward Jerome. I wasn't. No one speaks, not the judge, not the attorneys, not you. Antonio Vargas steps down. The judge calls for a short recess. Outside in the hallway, you lean against the cool stone wall. Your pulse thuds in your ears. You feel lightheaded but not afraid. You glance down the corridor. Jerome is standing there flanked by his attorney. He's looking at the floor arms folded. Then, slowly, he looks up. He sees you. His expression doesn't change, but he gives a small nod. This time, you nod back. When the hearing resumes, the judge addresses the room directly. In light of the new evidence, the testimony just given, and the review of procedural irregularities, she says this court finds sufficient grounds to vacate the conviction of Jerome Ellis pending further review by the state. She pauses. This man should not have spent the last 15 years behind bars. The words don't echo. They settle. They settle into the bones of everyone in the room. Jerome's head bows not in triumph, but in something quieter. Release. You exhale for what feels like the first time in weeks. Later, outside, you watch the press swarm around Leah and Carol Lynn. Jerome stands quietly beside them, speaking only when asked. His words are calm, controlled. He thanks his attorneys, the DA's review team, and a librarian whose name I don't know, but whose work changed my life. You don't step forward. You don't need to. You walk home under a sky streaked with autumn gold. For the first time, the silence feels peaceful, earned. The library feels different when you return. Not louder, not busier, just noticed. People greet you more deliberately now. A few colleagues give you those glances, the kind that say, I know, without saying anything. Mia, the intern, hands you a muffin with a tiny post-it that reads, Welcome back, detective. You laugh quietly and thank her. But beneath the warmth, you sense something else. The sense that stories, even true ones, never really end with the verdict. They ripple. They echo. There's a letter waiting at the front desk when you arrive. Plain envelope. No name, just a return address from Folsom. You recognize it immediately. You don't open it right away. You shelve books. Help a patron locate a long, out-of-print train history book. Water the spider plant that's been drooping for weeks. Only after all that do you return to your desk, sit down and open the envelope. It's handwritten. The paper smooth and folded crisply. I don't know how you found what you did, it begins. But I know this, you saved me. You read slowly. Jerome's handwriting is neat measured. His words are simple, direct. He writes about the moment he heard his name read in court and knew for the first time in years that someone believed him. Again, 15 years is a long time to feel erased. You gave me back my outline. The line sits with you. You close the letter and place it gently in your drawer. You don't need to frame it. You just need to remember it's there. The DA's office continues its formal review, Leah says. They've started investigating older cases, files once thought handled, and people have begun to ask questions about how many other boxes went unopened, how many other transcripts were too quiet. You don't see Jerome again, not in person, but you see a newspaper article. His face, now older, stronger above the headline, "Ellis speaks what happens when the system almost forgets you." You clip the article, not for display, just to keep. There's a photo beside it. He's smiling. Not big, not wide, but real. You sit at your desk and reopen Gideon's trumpet, thumbing to a passage you've always loved. It speaks about dignity, not as something granted, but as something inherent waiting to be recognized. That's what this all was. Recognition of truth, of error, of quiet resistance. That evening, as you lock the library doors, you think about all the other boxes, all the other names. You can't open them all, but maybe you've shown someone else that they can, that a dusty folder matters, that silence isn't the end of the story. It's just the part waiting to be heard. Your routine slowly returns, but something inside you doesn't. You find yourself noticing things more. When a record is missing, when a date doesn't match, when someone's file is thinner than it should be, you feel a pulse behind it now. Not just curiosity, responsibility. The case is over officially. Jerome's conviction is vacated, and his name is cleared in the public record. He's free, but not restored. You understand now that freedom and restoration aren't always the same. One morning, you receive a padded envelope from Leah. Inside is a flash drive. A note paper-clipped to it reads, "Just for you, something to hold on to." You plug it into your computer at the library when the morning sun is just starting to warm the edges of your desk. There's one video file. Jerome, Ellis out, interview, final. MP4. It's a short documentary Leah explains in the note part of a series they're doing on wrongful convictions. Jerome's segment is the first. You put on your headphones. The video opens with him seated on a simple wooden bench in front of a bare wall. There's no music, no special lighting, just his voice. I remember the sound of the courtroom more than the words he begins. The papers, the chairs, the way no one looked at me except the judge when he said, "Guilty." That was the moment I knew I had disappeared. He pauses. But someone found me again. You see him speak about the trial, about the years in prison, about the nights he stopped counting days because they only hurt. But then he talks about the day he was told his case was being re-examined. That day, I didn't smile, he says. Not because I wasn't happy, but because I didn't believe it yet. It took time. Belief isn't a light switch. It's something that creeps back slowly, like a sunrise you didn't expect to see again. The screen fades to black. One line remains on screen. Truth takes time. Dignity waits longer. You watch it again and again. Then you tuck the flash drive into your drawer next to his letter, a small archive of your own. Later that day, a teenager comes into the library, asks for help with a school paper on the criminal justice system. You show him where the books are, help him locate a few titles, recommend a documentary or two. Then, without explanation, you print a copy of the article about Jerome and hand it to him. This might help, you say. He takes it puzzled, but intrigued. And that's enough. You walk through the aisles with quiet satisfaction. The library is still a place of stories. Now it holds one more that got its ending. You don't expect to be called as a witness. But 3 weeks after Jerome's release, a formal inquiry is opened into the handling of his case, not just by the prosecution, but the court records office. Someone higher up has taken an interest in how one box, one memo, and one piece of footage could simply vanish without alarm. The notice arrives in a plain manila envelope, a subpoena for your sworn statement. Your first instinct is apprehension. You were never in this for attention for standing in front of anyone. You're a librarian, a keeper of order, not a participant in legal theater. But then, you remember that sentence in Jerome's letter, "You gave me back my outline." So you go. It's not a courtroom, this time just a government hearing room with fluorescent lights that buzz too loudly and folding chairs that feel 2 decades old. You're seated at a long wooden table across from a panel of 3 state investigators and 1 judicial liaison. They offer water. Ask if you're comfortable. You nod. Then they begin. At first, the questions are procedural. When did you discover the box? Who else had access? How was it stored and for how long? You answer steadily, but then the questions shift. Why did you keep looking? You take a breath, because you'd asked yourself that more than once, hadn't you? Why you, of all people? So you answer honestly, I kept looking, because I couldn't stop hearing what wasn't said. And once you know something's wrong, you don't get to put it back on the shelf. They write that down. One of the panelists asks about the CDR, the missing one. You tell them about the security footage about the intern whose swipe badge was used in the middle of the night. You give them the incident number, the date, the name of the man who visited the library, asking oddly specific questions. You watch them take note after note. But what strikes you most is that they're listening. Not nodding along, listening. When it ends, you're thanked formally with sincerity. One investigator shakes your hand. You changed more than 1 life, she says. You leave the building slowly, walking past rows of parked cars and pigeons gathered at a puddle near the curb. It's strange how light the world feels when you no longer carry the story alone. Back at the library, everything is as it was. The cart of returns is full. A child is reading aloud to her grandfather near the window. Your co-worker waves as you enter and jokes, "Missed you in the archives today." You smile. Because you've missed it too. You sit back down at your desk. In the inbox, a new message from Leah. Thought you'd want to see this. Attached is a scan of a handwritten letter from Jerome, addressed to the review board, a witness statement. He writes about the original trial, the silence, and the day he learned someone found his name again. He writes about prison, but not with bitterness. He writes about a library he's never been to, and a person whose name he didn't know until recently. I didn't ask to be rescued, he writes. But I'm grateful someone saw the corner I was in. You print it out, place it in the binder, the one marked simply Ellis, and you realize something. Stories don't end in a verdict. They end when someone decides to stop turning the page. And for this one, that day hasn't come. The binder stays in your drawer, but it isn't dormant. Every so often, someone asks about it. A colleague whispers a question during lunch. A retired judge visits the library and lingers too long in the legal history aisle before quietly asking, "Are you the one who found that box?" And you never brag. You never elaborate. But you nod once, and that's enough. Weeks later, the DA's office reaches out again. At this time, it's not for files or statements. It's for consultation. They're reviewing several other cases now. Old ones. Ones with missing entries, partial transcripts, unexplained gaps in record logs. And they want your help. You're not an attorney. You're not an investigator. But you are meticulous. You've built systems for organizing truth. They ask if you'll work with a special audit team as an independent civilian archivist. The title is almost comical, but the meaning is serious. You say yes. It begins slowly. You meet at a small office in a side building of the courthouse room 2B, where ceiling tiles don't quite match and the walls are too beige. But they give you a desk, a scanner, a password. Your task: review flagged cases for inconsistencies in evidence logs, missing timestamps and documents, not filed to standard. The same skills you used to organize the library to track down long-lost books now apply here. And it matters. One afternoon, as you're scanning a box labeled Stanton R. 2006, you find something familiar, a memo with no initials, a timestamp that doesn't match the court docket, a statement referenced in the transcript but missing from the file. You highlight the gaps. Add them to the review form. One of the audit clerks glances at your work and murmurs, "You've got an eye for this." You say nothing, but inside you know what it really is: an ear for silence, for what's not there. Meanwhile, the library remains your anchor. You still return every morning, still shelve books, still greet regulars by name. And one morning, you find something left on the front desk. No note, no envelope, just a copy of Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. Inside the front cover, someone has written in neat pencil, "For those who refuse to look away." You don't recognize the handwriting, but you place it on the front shelf under staff recommendations with no label. Just the book. Let it speak for itself. That night, you close the library alone, and as you turn out the lights, you walk through the aisles, slowly, fingers brushing the spines as you pass. Every book a voice, every shelf a history, and somewhere between all those pages, someone who once sat in a cell now walks free, because you opened the right box and didn't stop there. You receive another letter from Jerome. This one comes in an envelope that's already been opened, examined by the legal mail scanner, no doubt, but folded back together carefully, as if someone knew it mattered more than most. Inside, the writing is the same, precise, steady, but the tone is different. "I'm living in a halfway house for now," it begins. "It's quiet here, too quiet sometimes, but I'm free to walk outside. That still doesn't feel real." He describes the little things, the way the sun feels too bright, the way people stare, sometimes kindly, sometimes not, how it feels to buy something with his own hands again. "I don't sleep much yet. I listen to old radio shows at night. There's one about a detective who never carries a gun, just listens better than everyone else. I think you'd like it." You do. He ends the letter with a question. "If you ever feel like meeting in person, I'd like to thank you properly, but no pressure." You fold the letter slowly. You don't answer right away, but you keep it close, in your coat pocket this time. Later that week, you're invited to a panel discussion at the State University. The topic: civilian roles in justice reform. You hesitate at first, unsure if you want to speak publicly. But then you think about the intern who accessed the file room at 2:14 a.m., about the old memo with the red-circled signature, about Leah's voicemail he knows, and you say yes. The auditorium is modest, filled mostly with students and a few professors. You sit on stage beside Leah and a retired judge who now runs a nonprofit for post-conviction review. When it's your turn to speak, you don't recite a speech. You just tell the story. No dramatics, no names except Jerome's because, he gave you permission. You speak of dust, of files, of silence, and how sometimes silence is a scream no one hears. Afterward, a young woman approaches you in the lobby, law student first year, eyes bright but tired. She thanks you. Says she was considering switching majors, but maybe she'll stay. I didn't think ordinary people could do things like that, she says. You smile. Neither did I. You reply. That night, you return home to your quiet kitchen, your tea, and your windows that overlook a small patch of streetlight glow. You pull out a blank card. Write just a few words, let's meet. No pressure either, but I'd like that. You send it to the halfway house address Jerome provided. You don't know what will come of it, if anything, but what matters is the opening. A gesture returned. The next day at the library you begin reorganizing the case law section. You run your fingers along the spines, pause on one volume and notice a faint pencil mark beside a case name, Ellis v. California. 2025. You didn't put it there, but someone did. Someone looking. Someone learning. You erase it with your thumb gently, because the story doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to everyone who'll pick it up next. You meet him on a Sunday afternoon. It's in a small park on the east side of town near a trailhead where families stroll and joggers pass in quiet rhythm. You chose the place, carefully neutral open, with benches that face the trees instead of each other. That way, you don't have to look if it gets too much. But you do. You see him as he approaches slow steady, carrying a paper bag in one hand and a folded jacket in the other. He's dressed plainly. Jeans, gray sweater, clean shoes. He recognizes you first. Nods. You both sit. No handshake, no hug, just presence. There's a long pause before either of you speak, and it's him who breaks it. I didn't know what I'd say, he admits. Still don't. You nod. That's okay. He reaches into the paper bag and pulls out 2 coffees, still warm. Hands one to you. I didn't know how you'd take it, he says. You smile, like this is perfect. You sit in the silence that follows, but it's not uncomfortable. It's weightless, a kind of mutual exhale. Eventually, he speaks again. It's strange, he says. Freedom. I keep expecting someone to call my name like it's a mistake. It's not, you reply. I know, but habits take time to unlearn. He talks more now about the job training program he's just started, about his roommate who listens to jazz at all hours, about the way certain smells still make his stomach turn because they remind him of the prison laundry room. You listen. That's all you need to do. He asks about the library, and you tell him. About the archive wing, the students who leave too many coffee cups behind the regulars who've started reading about wrongful convictions since his story made the news. That part, he says softly, that part I like. When it's time to go, neither of you stands too quickly. He thanks you again, not in words, but in the way his shoulders soften in the small nod he gives before walking away. You don't watch him leave. You just sit for a while longer with the empty cup in your hands and the wind brushing gently through the trees. That night, you return home and open your notebook. You write just one line. Justice isn't a destination. It's something you carry. Then you turn out the light and sleep. Wind down summary. 300 words. Tonight's story was not about a hero or a villain. It was about presence. About one small action taken in silence. One box opened, one name spoken, and the slow, patient ripple that followed. You walked through a system not built for speed or compassion, and still you stayed steady. You listened for the missing parts. You trusted that even in a room full of sealed files and fading ink, someone's life could still be waiting to be seen. Jerome's story isn't rare. That's the quiet tragedy. But tonight, maybe you were reminded that even among forgotten records and bureaucratic shadows, someone like you can make a difference not by force, not by fight, but by attention, by care. As your breathing slows, let that idea settle beside you. That, your quiet instincts, your small decisions, your belief in what's right even when it's late and no one's watching, can matter. Let the final image blur softly in your mind. A librarian's desk, a folded letter in a drawer, and a man walking out of a courtroom, not just free, but seen. Let that be enough for tonight. Now, wherever you are, whatever time it is, take a slow breath. Let your hands soften. Let your eyelids drift. The world can wait. You've done enough for one day.